keys off now. So let me do a camera two. Let me do a camera one.
You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. You'll be like heaven to touch. I wanna hold you so much. At long last, love has arrived, and I thank God I'm alive. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you.
I better have an extended shot. I have to get a shot.
If it's quite alright, I need you.
Like an actual podcast of somebody, maybe.
The single greatest lesson I ever learned in my career that profoundly changed the course of my life was
multiple-time best-selling author,
third most watched TED Talk of all time.
The return of
Simon Sinek.
thank you very much. Past 30, 40 years, we've doubled down on how do I find love? How do I find happiness?
You have to
We've
position.
doubled down
They
on
have to
that.
position themselves
But
in
now,
that camera.
in a complicated, messy
size.
world, we haven't been practicing and developing
Right.
the skills of taking
I
care
can
of each other.
adjust
And that's what we need now.
as
more
I'm
than
doing
ever.
the
Do you
interview.
ever
Maybe
give up on
I don't
something?
know. He's all over the frickin' place. I don't know.
I have a fear, and I've never expressed this openly. Gen Z are the least resilient
So
generation.
if I'm on air,
Really good at presenting a confidence that they don't have. This young generation seems less capable to deal with stress than previous generations. That is true. Going from relationship to relationship to relationship, from job to job to job. There's no stigma to quitting. Flash forward 5 years, and what's going to happen is an employer is going to look at them and go, I can't take the risk. Everything we're talking about today comes right back to those human skills that we are lacking. How to listen, how to give and receive feedback, how to have a difficult conversation. And the thing we have to deal with more than anything is fear. Fear that is the underlying thing why we don't have honest conversations.
Let me give you some honesty then. What is the greatest fear you have about how you're currently living your life?
I was very insecure about admitting that I was crying, as we were talking about it. That was hard.
Without further ado, I'm Stephen Bartlett, and this is The Diary of a CEO. I hope nobody's listening, but if you are, then please keep this to yourself. Simon.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to be here. I have to thank you first and foremost, and many reasons. I'm a huge fan of all your work, but the conversation we had when we were over in LA was received so unbelievably well by the listeners on this podcast. It did millions and millions and millions of downloads in such a short space of time that I had to.
shots are terrible. Podcast. Christian podcast. Let's just get Vlad. Maybe Vlad has a solo and cell phone. Well, actually, it could be him and his wife. Is fine.
That's right. That's right. Now, let's dive in.
Yes.
One of the things that, before I talk about, my wife's going to mention the myths about dating. I had somebody who reached out and said things like, you should really talk about the biblical way of getting a spouse. Now, I have a list of 16 ways you can find a spouse according to the Bible. Okay? So, I'm actually going to give you that. I'm going to quickly give you that list. If you really want to find a spouse, not just a husband, but mainly it's a wife, because men were doing the searching. If you want to find a spouse, I'm going to give you a biblical way. Okay, so don't laugh and don't throw stones at me right now, but I'm just going to give you a biblical way.
You asked for it.
A lot of people asked for it, so I'm going to give you a biblical way. And this will lead into why I use why I use Genesis chapter 1, 2, and the teachings of Jesus and Apostle Paul as a references for relationships in Christianity. Not David and not Solomon, not Abraham, not Jacob, and not those guys. Why? And you will see right now in just a second. For example, one of the ways biblically to find how people in the Bible found a spouse was they found an attractive prisoner of war, brought her home, shaved her head, trimmed her nails, and gave her new clothes, and then she's yours. That's according to Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 11, 12, and 13. That's crazy. The second way is when you lay hold of a virgin who is not engaged to another.
And so I can only have one guest. It's gotta be a solo.
Dating advice videos are as old as YouTube itself. I remember being an 11, 12-year-old going on YouTube typing in how to get a girl to like you, or how do you know if a girl likes you, and watching whatever weirdness was on the search feed. But even past that, in our modern day, there's people like Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson or a plethora of other relationship podcasts that try to all give you insight and advice in this dating relationship sphere. And when it comes to the Christian community, there's been no shortage of books on this topic as well. A microeconomy, if you will, has been developing around the do's and don'ts of Christian dating. The thing is, many of these books are targeted towards women with titles like Before You Find Prince Charming, or When God Writes You a Love Story. These very feminine, whimsical titles are designed to intrigue women to read them, to get more insight on how to have a godly biblical relationship. But there's very few books out there that are actually targeted towards men. And many people would say, well, this is just because, men don't really read books, so it's not targeted towards them because there's no money to be made in it. But I think it testifies to a larger issue of the feminization.
And I can talk, and
of
him
the
and I can be,
church
well,
and
what
modern
about, what
Christianity.
about?
There is a feminine glaze on every piece of Christian content that seems to be coming out these days, and men are told to gobble it up. I did this. I read like every book. I read every article. I listened to every podcast that was targeted around Christian dating, and even though it was very feminized, very targeted towards women and how they should go about it, I ate it all up. And in so doing, I adopted a lot of their advice and a lot of their recommendations when I shouldn't have, that were actually harmful for me as a man. There were 3 specific terrible pieces of advice that I'm going to share with you now that you should not follow if you are a Christian man and you're looking to date, you're looking to be in a relationship of any kind. Do not follow these. So the first one is wait for your spouse. This is so common in Christian vernacular, Christian lingo. Wait for your spouse, and often it's tied